It was August 1974, and the lights inside the Las Vegas Hilton were burning bright like they did every single night when the king of rock and roll took the stage. Thousands of people packed into that massive showroom, dressed in their finest clothes, jewelry sparkling under the chandeliers, champagne glasses clinking at every table. They had paid top dollar for those seats, some of them saving for months just to see Elvis Presley perform live. The energy in that room was electric, the kind of energy that only Elvis could generate. But what nobody in that audience expected, what nobody could have ever predicted, was that in just a few minutes, Elvis was going to stop his entire show for one person. Not a celebrity. Not a wealthy patron. Not even someone sitting in the front row. He was going to stop everything for a waitress who was crying in the back of the room, and what he whispered to her that night would shock everyone who witnessed it and create a moment that people would talk about for decades to come. Before we dive into what happened that incredible night, if you love stories about Elvis Presley that show the real man behind the legend, the moments that reveal his true character and the heart he had for ordinary people, then you absolutely need to hit that subscribe button right now and turn on notifications because we bring you these amazing untold stories every single week. And if this story touches your heart the way it touched mine, make sure you smash that like button and drop a comment telling us your favorite Elvis moment. Now let's get into what really happened that unforgettable evening in Las Vegas. The year 1974 was a complicated time for Elvis. He was still the biggest entertainer in the world, still selling out every single show, still making grown women faint and strong men get tears in their eyes when he sang. But behind the scenes, things weren't easy. His marriage to Priscilla had ended the year before. His health wasn't what it used to be. The pressures of fame, of living up to the legend, of being Elvis Presley every single day of his life, were weighing on him in ways that most people couldn't understand. But here's the thing about Elvis that made him different from every other superstar who has ever lived. No matter what he was going through personally, no matter how much pain he might have been in, no matter how exhausted he was from performing 2 shows a night, 7 days a week, he never lost sight of the people around him. He never stopped caring about the waiters, the kitchen staff, the security guards, the cleaning crews. He never forgot where he came from or the struggles that ordinary working people faced every single day. That particular evening started like any other Vegas show. Elvis came out in one of his famous jumpsuits, this one white with gold embellishments, the cape flowing behind him like he was some kind of superhero, which in a way, he was to all those people in that audience. The band kicked into the opening number and Elvis was doing what he did best, commanding that stage with a presence that nobody before or since has ever matched. He moved through his setlist, hitting all the classics that people came to hear. CC Rider got everyone on their feet. Burning Love had the whole room shaking. When he slowed things down with You Gave Me a Mountain, you could hear people openly weeping in their seats. This was Elvis at his most powerful, using his voice not just to entertain but to touch people's souls in ways that went beyond music. About 40 minutes into the show, Elvis was preparing to go into How Great Thou Art, one of his favorite gospel songs and a number that always brought the house down. But something caught his attention. In the back of the showroom, near the service entrance where the waitstaff came in and out with their trays of drinks, Elvis's keen eyes noticed movement that seemed different from the usual organized chaos of a Vegas show. He could see someone bent over, shoulders shaking, clearly upset about something. The band was ready to start the next song. The audience was waiting. Everyone was looking at Elvis. But instead of giving the signal to his musicians, instead of launching into the next number like he was supposed to, Elvis held up his hand and walked to the front of the stage. The room got quiet. Confusion rippled through the crowd. This wasn't part of the show. This wasn't rehearsed. Elvis shielded his eyes from the spotlights and looked toward the back of the room. "Hold on just a minute, folks," he said into the microphone, his voice gentle but firm. "I need to check on something." He gestured to someone in the wings, one of his guys, and pointed toward the back of the showroom. You could feel the tension building in the audience. What was happening? Was something wrong? Was there some kind of emergency? People started looking around, trying to figure out what Elvis had seen that made him stop the entire show. The woman crying in the back was a waitress named Marion. She was 26 years old, a single mother with a 7-year-old daughter, and she had been working at the Las Vegas Hilton for almost 3 years. Marion wasn't supposed to be in the showroom during Elvis's performance. Her shift had ended 30 minutes earlier and she should have been on her way home. But she had stayed late to help another waitress who was overwhelmed with orders, because that was the kind of person Marion was. She always helped. She always put others first. She always did whatever needed to be done, even when she was exhausted, even when her feet hurt from standing for 10 hours straight, even when she just wanted to get home to see her daughter who was being watched by a neighbor. But as Marion was finally getting ready to leave, as she was walking through the back of the showroom toward the employee exit, the weight of everything she had been carrying finally crashed down on her. Earlier that day, Marion had received an eviction notice. Her landlord was raising the rent by $80 a month, and there was simply no way she could afford it. She was already working 6 days a week, already picking up every extra shift she could get, already skipping meals to make sure her daughter had enough to eat. The tips at the Hilton were good compared to other places, but they weren't enough to cover this increase. The notice gave her 30 days to either pay the new amount or find somewhere else to live. And in Las Vegas in 1974, affordable housing was almost impossible to find, especially for a single mother with no family in town and no savings to fall back on. Marion had held it together all day. She had smiled at customers. She had served drinks with a pleasant face. She had acted like everything was fine. But when she saw other waitresses laughing together, when she heard the music and saw all these wealthy people celebrating and having the time of their lives while she couldn't even afford to keep a roof over her daughter's head, something inside her just broke. The tears came before she could stop them, and once they started, she couldn't make them stop. Elvis's security chief made his way through the crowded tables to where Marion was standing. She was mortified. She was trying to wipe her tears, trying to compose herself, trying to become invisible. The last thing she wanted was to cause a scene or get in trouble at work. She could lose her job over this. Crying in front of customers, disrupting a show, drawing attention to herself when she was supposed to be professional and invisible. She started apologizing immediately, saying she would leave right away, saying she was so sorry for the disturbance. But the security chief, a big tough guy who had seen everything in his years protecting Elvis, had the gentlest expression on his face. "Elvis wants you to come down front," he said quietly. Marion thought she had heard wrong. Elvis Presley wanted her to come to the front of the showroom? That couldn't be right. She shook her head. "I need to leave," she whispered. "I'm sorry. I'll go right now." But the security chief put a hand on her shoulder. "Ma'am, when Elvis asks for you, it's not really a request. The walk from the back of that showroom to the front felt like it took a lifetime. Every single person in that audience was watching Marion as she made her way down the aisle, tears still streaming down her face, her uniform wrinkled from a long shift, her hair coming loose from the bun she had put it in that morning. She had never felt so exposed, so vulnerable, so completely out of place. These were wealthy people, glamorous people, people who belonged in a place like this. She was just a waitress. She was nobody. Why was Elvis doing this? What could he possibly want with her? When she reached the front, Elvis was standing right at the edge of the stage, and he got down on one knee so he could be at eye level with her. The entire showroom was dead silent. You could have heard a pin drop. "What's your name, honey?" Elvis asked, his voice so kind that it made fresh tears spring to Marion's eyes. She could barely speak. "Marion," she managed to whisper. Elvis smiled at her, that famous smile that had melted a million hearts, but there was something different about it in this moment. It wasn't the superstar smile. It wasn't the performer smile. It was genuine warmth, genuine concern, the smile of someone who truly cared about what she was going through. "Marion, I saw you crying back there," Elvis said, speaking quietly enough that his words were just for her, not for the microphone, not for the audience. "And I stopped the show because I need you to know something. Whatever you're going through right now, whatever burden you're carrying, you don't have to carry it alone." Before we continue with what happened next, I want to pause here because this moment right here, this is what made Elvis different from every other entertainer who has ever lived. He had thousands of people waiting. He had a show to do. He had a schedule to keep. But none of that mattered more to him than this one woman's pain. None of that was more important than showing another human being that they mattered, that they were seen, that they were worth stopping everything for. If that doesn't give you chills, if that doesn't make you understand why people loved Elvis the way they did, then I don't know what will. Drop a comment right now and tell us if you've ever had someone show you kindness when you needed it most. Marion tried to explain through her tears. She tried to tell Elvis that she was fine, that he should get back to his show, that she was so sorry for the interruption. But Elvis wasn't having any of it. He could see that this wasn't just someone having a bad day. This was someone who was truly struggling, someone who was at the end of their rope, someone who needed help. He gestured to one of his band members and whispered something. Then he turned back to Marion. "I want you to stay right here for the rest of the show," he said. "I'm going to have someone bring you a chair. You're going to sit right here where I can see you, and you're going to let me sing for you tonight." Marion started to protest. She couldn't possibly sit at the front of the showroom during an Elvis concert. She wasn't dressed right. She wasn't prepared. She didn't belong there. But Elvis took her hand gently in his. "Marion, everyone in this room paid a lot of money to be here tonight. But right now, you're my most important guest. Will you do me the honor of staying?" How could she say no? A chair was brought and placed right at the front, just a few feet from where Elvis performed. Marion sat down, completely overwhelmed, still crying but now for entirely different reasons. Elvis stood back up, took the microphone, and addressed the audience. "Folks, I apologize for the interruption, but I saw someone hurting and I couldn't just ignore it and keep singing about love and peace and hope if I wasn't willing to show those things when they mattered. This beautiful lady's name is Marion, and she works here at the Hilton, and tonight she's going to be my guest of honor. I want you all to give her a round of applause for the hard work she does." The entire showroom erupted in applause. People were standing, clapping, many of them crying themselves because they understood they were witnessing something extraordinary, something that went far beyond entertainment. Elvis went into How Great Thou Art, and he sang it directly to Marian. He sang it with every ounce of emotion in his body. He sang it like he was trying to lift her burden with the power of that song, with the power of his voice, with the power of his absolute conviction that there was something greater than all of us that could help us through our darkest moments. When he hit those high notes at the end, when his voice soared up to the rafters and filled every corner of that massive showroom, there wasn't a dry eye in the house. Marian was sobbing openly, her hands covering her face, her whole body shaking with the release of all the fear and stress and worry she had been holding inside. But Elvis wasn't done. When the song ended, when the thunderous applause finally died down, he knelt down again next to Marian. This time he leaned in very close and whispered something in her ear. Nobody in the audience could hear what he said. The microphone didn't pick it up. It was just between Elvis and Marian. But whatever he said made Marian's eyes go wide with shock. She pulled back and looked at him like she couldn't believe what she had just heard. Elvis smiled and nodded. "I mean it," he said, still speaking quietly. "You come see me after the show. You bring your daughter. We're going to take care of this." Marian started crying even harder, but now she was also laughing, this mixture of disbelief and joy and relief all happening at once. Elvis stood up and continued with his show, but something had shifted. The energy in that room had changed. It wasn't just a concert anymore. It had become something sacred, something holy, a moment where everyone present got to witness what it looked like when someone with power and influence used those gifts not for themselves but to help another person. Elvis performed with even more passion than usual. Every song seemed to carry extra weight. Every gesture seemed more meaningful. And Marian sat in that chair at the front of the stage, no longer crying, but smiling through her tears, watching this incredible man perform and knowing that her life was about to change. After the show ended, after the standing ovation, after the last encore, Marian was escorted backstage. She was nervous, shaking, still not entirely sure if what was happening was real or some kind of dream. Elvis's dressing room was crowded with people, managers and musicians and friends all gathered around. But when Marian was brought in, Elvis waved everyone else away. "Give us a minute," he said. When they were alone, Elvis sat down with Marian and asked her to tell him what was going on. And Marian, feeling safe for the first time in months, told him everything. She told him about the eviction notice. She told him about her daughter. She told him about working 6 days a week and still barely making ends meet. She told him about skipping meals and lying awake at night worrying about what would happen if she got sick or if her car broke down or if any one of 100 other disasters struck. She told him about the fear that lived in her chest every single day, the fear that she was failing her daughter, that she couldn't provide a stable home, that she wasn't enough. Elvis listened to every word. He didn't interrupt. He didn't check his watch. He didn't act like he had somewhere more important to be. He just listened with his full attention, the way you would listen to someone you truly cared about. When Marian finished, when she had poured out the whole story, Elvis reached into his jacket and pulled out his checkbook. Marian's eyes went wide. "No," she said immediately. "I can't accept money from you. I didn't tell you all this to ask for a handout. I don't know why I even told you. I just..." Elvis held up a hand. "Marian, let me tell you something. When I was a boy growing up in Tupelo, Mississippi, my family had nothing. I mean nothing. We lived in a two-room house. There were times when we didn't have enough food. There were times when we got evicted and had to move in with relatives. I know what it's like to be where you are right now. I know what it's like to have the weight of the world on your shoulders and feel like you're drowning and nobody cares. He started writing in the checkbook as he continued talking. God gave me this gift, Elvis said. He gave me this voice and this career and all this money and success. And I believe with everything in me that he gave it to me for a reason. Not just to sing and entertain, but to help people. To make a difference. To show kindness when someone needs it most. So you're not taking a handout from me, Marion. You're letting me fulfill my purpose. You're giving me the opportunity to use what I have to help someone who deserves it. He tore the check out of the book and handed it to Marion. She looked at it and gasped. It was enough to cover 6 months of rent at the new rate plus extra. That should give you some breathing room, Elvis said. Time to get on your feet. Time to not have to worry for a little while. Marion was speechless. She started to cry again, these tears of pure gratitude and disbelief. She tried to thank him, but the words wouldn't come. Elvis stood up and gave her a hug. You don't have to thank me, he said. You just take care of yourself and that little girl of yours. And if you ever need anything else, you let my people know. You hear me? Marion nodded against his chest, unable to speak, unable to do anything but hold on to this incredible man who had just changed her life. But Elvis still wasn't done. One more thing, he said as Marion was getting ready to leave. You said your daughter is 7 years old, right? Marion nodded. What's her name? Rebecca, Marion answered. Elvis smiled. I bet Rebecca would like to meet me. Why don't you bring her by the Hilton tomorrow afternoon? I'll be rehearsing around 2 o'clock. I want to meet this little girl who has such a strong mama. The next day, Marion brought Rebecca to the Las Vegas Hilton. The little girl was wearing her best dress, her hair in perfect pigtails, her eyes wide with excitement and nervousness. When Elvis came out to meet them, he didn't just say a quick hello and send them on their way. He spent half an hour with Rebecca. He showed her around the stage. He let her touch his guitars. He sang Teddy Bear just for her. He signed autographs and took pictures. He treated this 7-year-old daughter of a waitress like she was the most important person in the world. And before they left, he gave Rebecca a teddy bear that was nearly as big as she was, along with a note that said to Rebecca, always remember that you're special and you can do anything you set your mind to. Your friend, Elvis. News of what Elvis had done spread quickly through the Hilton staff. Other workers came forward with their own stories of Elvis's kindness. The busboy whose medical bills Elvis had paid when his son got sick. The janitor whose car Elvis had replaced when it broke down. The cocktail waitress whose elderly mother Elvis had sent to a specialist in California, all expenses paid. The housekeeper whose family in Mexico Elvis had helped bring to the United States legally, hiring an immigration lawyer and covering all the costs. These stories had been kept quiet because that's how Elvis wanted it. He didn't do these things for publicity. He didn't call photographers or reporters. He helped people because he genuinely cared, because he couldn't stand seeing someone suffer when he had the means to ease that suffering. What happened that night in August 1974 became legendary among Elvis fans and among the people who worked in Las Vegas. Marion kept that check stub framed on her wall for the rest of her life. She never forgot what Elvis did for her, not just the money, though that was life-changing, but the way he made her feel. The way he saw her when she felt invisible. The way he stopped an entire show because her pain mattered to him. The way he treated her with dignity and respect and kindness when she was at her lowest point. Marion ended up working at the Las Vegas Hilton for another 20 years. She never missed an Elvis show when he was in town. She would stand in the back, in her uniform, and watch him perform with tears of gratitude streaming down her face, remembering the night he changed her life. Rebecca, Marion's daughter, grew up knowing that once upon a time Elvis Presley had cared enough about her mother to stop a show and help their family. She kept that teddy bear her entire life. Years later, when she had children of her own, she would tell them the story of the night the king of rock and roll proved that real royalty isn't about crowns and thrones. It's about how you treat people when nobody is watching, when it doesn't benefit you, when you could easily just walk on by. She told them about a man who had everything but never forgot what it was like to have nothing. She told them about kindness and compassion and using whatever gifts you have to make the world a little bit better for someone else. Elvis continued performing in Las Vegas, continued selling out shows, continued being the biggest star in the world. But for those who were there that night, for those who witnessed what he did for Marion, something shifted in how they understood who Elvis Presley really was. They realized that all the movies and records and concerts, as amazing as those were, they weren't the most important thing about him. The most important thing was his heart. His capacity for empathy. His willingness to see beyond the spotlight and connect with people on a human level. His understanding that fame and fortune meant nothing if you didn't use them to help others. Think about what it must have taken for Elvis to do what he did that night. He was exhausted. He was dealing with his own problems. He was in the middle of a performance that thousands of people had paid to see. It would have been so easy to just keep singing, to let someone on his staff deal with the crying waitress, to stay focused on the show and his responsibilities to the audience who was there to see him. Nobody would have blamed him for that. Nobody would have thought less of him. But that wasn't who Elvis was. He couldn't ignore someone's pain. He couldn't pretend not to see someone hurting. Even when it was inconvenient. Even when it disrupted his show. Even when it meant being vulnerable in front of thousands of people and showing them that he cared about more than just entertaining them. The impact of that night rippled out in ways that Elvis probably never fully realized. People in that audience went home and told their families what they had witnessed. They told their friends. They wrote letters to newspapers. They called radio stations. The story spread not because Elvis wanted publicity, but because people were so moved by what they had seen that they couldn't keep it to themselves. In a world that often feels cold and indifferent, in a society where people with power and money so often ignore those who are struggling, here was proof that it didn't have to be that way. Here was an example of someone who had every reason to be selfish and self-absorbed but chose kindness instead. Here was evidence that one person could make a real difference in another person's life. And here's what makes this story even more powerful. Elvis did this kind of thing all the time. This wasn't a one-time publicity stunt. This wasn't him having a particularly generous day. This was who he was consistently throughout his entire career. From the time he first got famous in the 1950s until his death in 1977, Elvis used his wealth and influence to help people. He bought houses for strangers. He paid hospital bills for people he didn't know. He gave away cars like other people give away candy. He funded charities quietly. He helped people in need constantly. Some estimates suggest that Elvis gave away more than $1 million a year to various causes and individuals throughout his career, and this was back when $1 million was worth a lot more than it is today. What Elvis whispered to Marion that night wasn't just about money. Yes, he told her he was going to help with her rent situation. But he also told her something else, something that Marion shared years later in an interview. He told her, "You matter. Your life matters. Your daughter's life matters. Don't ever think that just because you're working a regular job and struggling to get by that you're not important." Some of the most important people I've ever known were people just like you, working hard, doing their best, trying to take care of their families. That's what real strength looks like. That's what real heroism looks like. Not standing on a stage singing songs, but doing what you do every single day. Those words, more than the check, more than the public recognition, those words gave Marion something she had lost. They gave her back her dignity. They gave her back her sense of worth. They reminded her that she mattered. This is the Elvis Presley that doesn't always make it into the history books. The documentaries focus on his music, his impact on rock and roll, his movies, his Vegas years, his struggles with prescription drugs, his relationship with Priscilla, his death. All of that is part of his story. But so is this. So are the countless acts of kindness. So are the lives he changed. So are the people he helped without cameras rolling or reporters watching. So is the heart that beat beneath the sequined jumpsuits and the sold-out shows. That heart, that compassion, that fundamental decency, that's as much a part of Elvis's legacy as a Hound Dog or Suspicious Minds or any of his #1 hits. Marion passed away in 2003, but before she died, she gave an interview to a local Las Vegas newspaper. She told the story of that night in 1974 one more time. She talked about how Elvis had saved her family. She talked about how that moment of kindness had carried her through difficult times for the rest of her life. Whenever things got hard, whenever she felt overwhelmed, she would remember that night. She would remember that Elvis Presley, the biggest star in the world, had cared about her. Had seen her. Had helped her. And if someone like that could show her kindness, then surely she could find the strength to keep going. Marion ended that interview with these words, "People always ask me what it was like to meet Elvis. They want to know if he was as handsome in person as he was on TV. They want to know what his voice sounded like up close. They want to know if he was nice. And I tell them that Elvis wasn't just nice. He was good. There's a difference. Nice is saying please and thank you. Good is stopping your entire show because someone's crying in the back of the room. Good is using everything you have to help someone you don't know and will never see again. Good is treating a struggling waitress with the same respect you'd show a queen." That's who Elvis was. He was good. If you're watching this video right now, if you've stayed with us through this whole story, then you understand something important. You understand that the real measure of a person isn't their fame or their talent or their wealth. It's how they treat people who can't do anything for them. It's whether they notice when someone is hurting. It's whether they're willing to inconvenience themselves to help another person. Elvis Presley had flaws. He was human. He made mistakes. He struggled with personal demons. But he also had a capacity for kindness that was extraordinary. He also used his platform for good. He also made the world a better place for people like Marion and her daughter Rebecca and countless others whose names we'll never know. So let me ask you something. What would you have done if you were Elvis that night? Would you have noticed Marion crying in the back? Would you have stopped the show? Would you have gone out of your way to help someone you didn't know? Or would you have kept singing, kept the show moving, kept focused on your own responsibilities? There's no judgment either way. We're all human. We all have limitations. But the story of Elvis and Marion challenges us to think about how we can show up for others. How we can use whatever resources we have, whether that's money or time or influence or just the ability to see someone who's hurting and let them know they matter. You don't have to be Elvis Presley to make a difference. You don't have to be famous or wealthy. You just have to be willing to pay attention and to care. Before we wrap up this incredible story, I want you to do something for me. I want you to take a second and hit that like button if this story moved you. I want you to subscribe to this channel if you want more stories about Elvis that reveal the real man behind the legend. And most importantly, I want you to drop a comment below telling us about a time when someone showed you unexpected kindness, or a time when you were able to help someone who needed it. Let's create a community here that celebrates and encourages the kind of goodness that Elvis showed. Let's remind each other that in a world that can feel harsh and uncaring, there are still people who choose kindness. There are still people who stop when they see someone hurting. There are still people who understand that we're all in this together. The story of Elvis stopping his show for a crying waitress is more than just a heartwarming anecdote. It's a reminder of what's possible when we choose to see each other, really see each other. When we choose to act with compassion. When we choose to use whatever we have to make someone else's burden a little lighter. Marion needed help that night in 1974, and Elvis gave it without hesitation. He didn't think about the inconvenience. He didn't worry about what the audience would think. He didn't calculate whether it was good for his image. He just saw someone hurting and responded with his whole heart. That's the legacy that matters. That's the story worth telling. That's the Elvis Presley we should all remember and try to emulate in our own lives, in our own ways, with whatever resources we have available. So the next time you see someone struggling, the next time you witness someone in pain, the next time you have the opportunity to help even when it's not convenient, even when no one is watching, even when you won't get credit for it, remember Marion and Elvis. Remember that moment in a Las Vegas showroom when the king of rock and roll proved that real royalty is measured not by the crown you wear but by the way you treat the least among us. Remember that your kindness matters. Your compassion matters. Your willingness to stop and help matters more than you could possibly know. Thank you so much for watching. Make sure you subscribe, hit that notification bell, smash that like button, and drop your comments below. Until next time, keep the spirit of Elvis alive by being good to each other.